Good evening. Welcome to the Chicago Legal Clinic's Immigration Forum. I'm very happy tonight to have my colleague at the Chicago Legal Clinic, Ina Winston, as our wonderful guest. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
So we have a lot of interesting things to talk about, including some pending regulations. But first I want to talk a little bit about the Chicago Legal Clinic. The Chicago Legal Clinic was established in 1982 by two new lawyers. And the reason it was established is that there was nothing in South Chicago to help people who were working but did not earn a lot of money. At one point, South Chicago was the home to people who were working in the steel mills. They were doing a lot of work, but when the steel mills started closing, people lost their jobs, they lost their homes, the businesses went out of business because there were no clients, and there was nothing available at low cost for people to go to for assistance. So the two new lawyers formed the Chicago Legal Clinic in one room, and now that was 1982. In 2019, there are now several different locations. South Chicago, Pilsen, where we work, Austin, downtown. There are two desks in the Daily Center offering free advice on foreclosures and child support. And also there is a free clinic for students at Harold Washington College where I teach. So if you have any questions concerning immigration, domestic violence, if you're a victim of domestic violence, if you need assistance with real estate, foreclosures, Social Security disability, please call the number on the back of the screen at 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. Please call between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, and you will be referred to an attorney at the Chicago Legal Clinic who will do an assessment of your case and give you your options. I also want to mention that we are now for immigrants in a particularly difficult time. The time that we're in, people are afraid. It's very important for people to live their lives and not give in to the fear. It's very hard to do, but it's very important that we not let people win who are trying to intimidate us. We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a proud nation of immigrants. I'm now going to talk to you in the Spanish language. Buenas tardes, me llamo Carolina Schoenberger. Soy una abogada con la Clínica Legal de Chicago. La Clínica Legal de Chicago fue establecido en 1982 por dos nuevos abogados. Antes de 1980 había muchas acerías en el sur de Chicago, pero se cerraron a las acerías y mucha gente ha perdido su trabajo, sus casas y los negocios sufrieron por la falta de clientes. Entonces, en este barrio no había ninguna oficina legal que ofrecía servicios legales a bajo costo. Entonces, los dos abogados establecieron la Clínica Legal de Chicago en un solo cuarto. Era 1982. Actualmente, en 2019, hay 4 oficinas en los barrios: Chicago, Pilsen, donde trabajamos, Austin y el centro. Hay 2 oficinas en las cortes que ofrecen ayuda legal gratis con mantenimiento por niños y también por foreclosures. Y hay una oficina que da aviso gratis a los estudiantes de Harold Washington College, donde soy profesora. Si tiene un problema legal como inmigración, violencia doméstica, bienes raíces, si quería aplicar por seguro social por gente de incapacidad, hay de llamarnos entre las 9 y las 5 de la tarde, el lunes hasta el viernes, al número 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. Quiero decir una cosa más. Somos un país establecido en este país por inmigrantes y yo soy bien orgulloso de esto. Y yo sé que hay un clima de miedo. Es importante luchar porque la gente que cree este miedo quería que nos salimos. Es importante vivir nuestras vidas con cuidado, pero es importante que la vida siga. Ahora yo quiero decir bienvenido otra vez a mi colega Ina Winston. Ina Winston is my esteemed colleague at the Chicago Legal Clinic, and we're going to talk tonight about a proposal that would hurt people if the Immigration Service or the consulates thinks there is a likelihood of becoming a public charge. So, hello again.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with my colleague,
Thank you.
my mentor, and my friend, Carolyn Schoenberger.
Thank you. Well, likewise. Let's talk about, what do we mean by public charge?
Well, let's take a look at how the term public charge was defined in the past, very briefly, how it's defined at present, and what the proposed rules would do. To make a long story short, the proposed rules basically throw away the core value of our immigration system, which is family unity, and look at people in terms of their value as a cog of commerce. So let's take a look briefly at the past. At the time when my father came, when they had the waves of massive immigration to the country in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, the immigration system we have now didn't really exist. A person basically had to show up. There were no petitioners. All the person had to do was just not be from one of the countries that we barred, which meant from China or from the countries that were in the Asiatic Triangle, like India, Burma, and Thailand. Other than that, the public charge rule was, in essence, the same rule as it is now, but totally interpreted in a different way. The public charge rule of 1882 did exclude people who were deemed to be idiots, lunatics, convicts, and people likely to become a public charge. So for a period of time, a person who was coming to the country was required to show that they had $25 in their possession, which then was a lot of money, and a ticket to their destination. That rule fell by the wayside, and in practice, most people were allowed to enter and go on their way.
Let me mention that both my grandfather, who came from Austria, and my great-grandparents, who came from Poland, came to the country that way, and they went through Ellis Island. And in Ellis Island, that's where they said you can either go on the mainland or you have to go back. And they, my Polish great-grandfather pushed a push cart. He didn't have any money. My grandfather sold shoes and eventually became a doctor. But the way to go in was, you didn't have to have much money and you had to go through Ellis Island.
Which millions of people did. And the people who were excluded at the time were people with visible disabilities. Deafness was a disqualifier. Women without a husband had a hard time, children without a father. But other than those situations, the millions of people went through and were processed. What's the practice today? The practice today is that the petitioner files the petition, and when it comes to proving that the person's not going to be a public charge, the petitioner provides their last 3 years of taxes, and we prepare an affidavit of support, an I-864. And basically, the petitioner has to show that when taking into account the number of people in the petitioner's family that are listed on the tax return, the most recent tax return, plus the immigrant or immigrants who are being sponsored, that the petitioner makes 125% of the poverty guideline. And sometimes the petitioner doesn't, so we have a co-sponsor, another documented person who steps up and says, if this person uses public benefits, I'll step in and help out if they need help.
We should mention this is a contract that the petitioner or the co-sponsor signs where they are responsible for the immigrant for 10 years. And this actually is enforced mostly in divorce court, where someone gets divorced and it means that the divorcing spouse, who is the sponsor, is held responsible. So this is where we are now. Where are we going? Or where may we be going?
Where are we going? Okay, new rules were published in the Federal Register, and the comment period ended December 10th.
So these were proposed rules,
These are
correct?
still proposed rules, and they are now sifting through the hundreds of thousands of comments criticizing this rule, and criticizing it with good reason. The factors which are considered now, the affidavit of support is just one factor. They supposedly the government will look at the totality of circumstances. Factor number one in the totality of circumstances, and it's all designed to look at the person's earnings. What is their age? Are they under 18 and unemployed, or are they over 61? That's a strong negative factor. Long story short, don't bring your unemployed grandmother, leave her at home. Okay, health. That's another big issue that's going to be considered. If you have a disabled child, you've got a problem. To me, this is just a disgraceful set of values to use. Family status. Large families are considered a negative factor unless the person has a high income. Assets, resources, and financial status. Well, let's look at it from the other way. What's a positive factor? A positive factor is if the person, the immigrant, can show that they have financial assets that amount to 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. For a family of four, that means that they have assets of $63,000. They will also consider whether the person has used public benefits in the past or has requested a fee waiver to file an application. They will also look at the person's credit rating. They will consider whether the person has private health insurance. Another factor is education and skills. What is the person's ability to speak English? What are their skills in terms of their employability? And if the person earns up 250% of the poverty guidelines, this is a positive factor. So what countries does this favor, really? What are we looking at? This has echoes of the reasoning that underlay the 1924 National Origins Act. When the public rules at that time did not succeed in weeding out the so-called undesirables, the act was passed and it halved the overall immigration cap. It cut the immigration cap by half, and it reduced the per-country cap on the number of people who could come in from any country to 2% of the people who were here in 1890. This struck most deeply at the people who were considered undesirable, namely Jews, Slavs, Greeks, Italians, who came in large numbers after 1890. This is the same kind of thing, because who does this rule favor? It favors people who come from rich, industrialized countries. It does not, it means that we would no longer be a country of opportunity as this country was for so many of our parents and grandparents. And they're very blunt in this rule about who they want and who they don't want. Who's the ideal person? A 30-year-old single person in good health with a good education and no dependents.
So there was discussion that talking about going away from family-based immigration to skills. And in some country it's based on skills. And they're trying, in my opinion, to do this by this proposed rule.
So let me ask you a question then. That brings up a question. What test is there? What set of skills is there that would tell you someone is going to be the next Irving Berlin, who came here at 5 years of age and wrote God Bless America and many other iconic American songs? What test is there who would tell you who's going to be the next Joseph Pulitzer, who came here with really serious health problems? Or Levi Strauss, who came here because his whole family's business went bankrupt in Austria? There's no test. You bring people here, you give them an opportunity, and people make good, just like they did in the past. What are we coming to? What are we as a people?
So where are we now in this process? They published the proposed rule. There was a comment period that ended in December. Hundreds of thousands of comments were proposed. What is happening now?
Well, they're sifting through the comments, and I'd say that what's happening now is that people are becoming increasingly wary of the use of public benefits. But I would like to note one thing. Actually, what problem is this designed to solve? The facts are that an immigrant generally is not entitled to any benefits like TANF or housing vouchers until they've been a permanent resident for 5 years. And study after study shows that immigrants use public benefits at a much lower rate than native-born people. So ask yourself, what problem is this solving, except to decide who comes to the country?
So my understanding is that even though the rules are proposed and at some point there are going to be final rules that are going to be enacted, that some of the consulates, Ciudad Juarez, some of the other consulates are starting to look at whether or not someone's going to be a public charge using this criteria. So we start to discuss what are some of the strategies to protect our clients. I mean, Ina's going to make a pitch at the end about what you can do now. But in the meantime, what can you do if we have something like is being proposed put into effect? What are one of the strategies that you can use?
Well, if you are sponsoring someone, if you are petitioning for someone, it's helpful if that person speaks English because it shows that they're more likely to get employment. It's helpful if they can, it's a hard thing to do, but it's helpful if you can show that you have health insurance and they're going to be right on your health insurance the second they come in here as a documented immigrant.
A lot of times, people who are sponsoring their spouses, you can actually get a letter from the sponsor's work saying the moment Mrs. X becomes a legal permanent resident, she can go on her husband's insurance. If someone doesn't speak English and does not have the opportunity in the home country to learn, there are programs here. There are programs all over the state, namely community colleges. Some are absolutely free. You can go, and English is a second language. You can go and sign up. You don't have to pay anything, just show up and learn. Or if you want to develop a skill, you can sign up English as a second language for credit. And then go on to a degree program. You could become some kind of a nurse's aide. You can become a bookkeeper. You could become a banker. So there are, again, degree programs, but you've got to start with the English. And again, low cost to enroll in any of the community colleges, including the one where I teach. And many times there are free English as a second language opportunity. So that is one strategy that would basically deal with the issue of speaking English as well as having a skill. And again, the insurance issue, which is to me one of the more difficult ones to overcome. What are some of the other strategies, do you think?
Well, personally, I feel people should give this issue a higher priority and should be writing to their congressman and calling up and burning up the phones. Because the way that these rules are going to be applied, if the person is an undocumented person who is seeking to adjust here in the United States, is that the government is going to be using this pseudoscientific mumbo-jumbo test to determine if they've received benefits. The test is really difficult to apply, and it's not going to be applied fairly. It's going to look at whether the person's received cash assistance, Medicaid, Medicare Part D low-income subsidy, SNAP benefits, Section 8 housing voucher, rental assistance, public housing. Many people live in blended families where there are immigrants and non-immigrants in the same family. How the person's usage is going to be allocated leaves a wide range for discretion.
So let me understand this. So if someone's kids are receiving Medicaid, that can hurt the immigrant? They're not getting Medicaid.
Well, it shouldn't. Theoretically, if the U.S. citizen child is receiving a benefit, it should not be counted against the parent.
But there's concern that it would be.
But there is concern that it would be. And then there's a specific rule as to these benefits that are monetizable, as to how much constitutes a bar. And the amount that would constitute a bar to adjustment would be 15% of the poverty guideline for a family of one, which means if the individual took approximately $1,821 worth of benefits in a 12-month period, it's going to be a bar.
Again-
There's already misapplication of some of these standards over at Immigration and in Ciudad Juarez. And it's just going to get more confusing if these rules are allowed to go into effect.
Again, the confusion that I have is immigrants are not entitled to cash assistance. If you're not documented, you can't get it. So part of this is confusing to me.
Well, it is very confusing. And, I mean, but living in public housing, a family lives in public housing.
So that's then, if you live in public housing, that counts against you.
It can. I mean, the problem is these rules are very confusing. And I don't think that they're going to be applied in a rational way, and I don't think that they should be applied because there is no problem to solve.
So if someone wanted to, even though the comment period is closed,
Pick up the phone, call your congressman.
okay, that's what...
You know people who vote, whether you're documented or not, either you vote or you know people who vote, and pick up the phone. They're not thinking about this right this minute, they're consumed with the wall. But what's the reality? The reality is that we're building a wall that is stronger than bricks and concrete and fences. It's being constructed every day by these rules marching along and coming closer to being enacted, applied really. This is the wall. This is what we need to speak up against.
So again, as Ina has suggested, this is a call to arms. Not physical arms, the arm of picking up the phone and calling someone, writing a letter, sending a tweet, sending something on Facebook that this is a danger to families and that we have to do what we can to stop it. So again, many people in the city can contact their local congressman. Certainly Senator Duckworth or Senator Durbin are certainly people you can call them, or you can send an email. You can write a letter basically asking them to oppose it. Do we have any sense when we may see the final rules?
No, I don't think we do. I think that there's so many comments that they haven't said when we're going to see the final rules.
Well, that's good, the fact that they're taking their time to look and see it. I'm sure that there will be a challenge to the rules.
Well, yeah, because America didn't get great by having an onerous wealth test. America got great by being a land of opportunity.
But even so, that there may be some due process violations. I think right now, the rules seem very vague and a lot of discretion.
That's exactly right. And the standard is a pseudoscientific mumbo-jumbo rule that isn't really a rule.
So again, this is something to be concerned about. If you are an immigrant or have an immigrant in your family who could be impacted, it might be wise to contact people. We really can't foresee what is going to be the final rules, other than they're probably not going to be helpful and they're probably going to be challenged. So it's important to step up. It's important to say your piece. Ina, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. And you can see the passion that Ina brings to the job, and she does that same passion.
We all do. We have a wonderful office.
So when we talk about it. So again, talking about strategies and how to deal with this. And next month, the third Wednesday in the month, we're going to, again, have our immigration forum show. We're going to have Luis Plasencia, who teaches tax accounting at Harold Washington College. Again, a strategy for dealing with the public charge. Luis is going to come and talk about the impact of the new tax law, not only on the public at large, but also on immigrants. So I urge you to please come in, and in the meantime, you have a problem, call the number on the screen, 773-731-1762. Thank you, have a good night, and be careful out there. Thank you.